Hi everyone, I'm Rekha Mudaraj in the KHOU 11 newsroom, joined by Cheryl Mercedes, one of our investigative reporters here. We're talking about something really serious, but it is incredibly important, and it's a subject that a lot of people have questions about. So we're happy you're here, and we are on Facebook Live. We want to hear from you and get your feedback on this, but we're talking about CPS and this big story that you did that's called Silent Cries. 1 year, 12 dead children, countless red flags. It's a very sad topic, but it's also a topic that a lot of people get very angry about because they feel like in so many cases that we cover, CPS didn't step up and do the right thing. But you dove into all of this, and I want you to tell us a little bit of an overview of how this all got started and how your investigation got started.
Okay, well, Rekha, first of all, this all started when we had the disappearance of Malia Davis. Before her body was even found, people were questioning what is going on. As you know, we released some of what was found in the investigative file, which included that CPS was investigating Malia Davis's family, including her mother, and that's who she was with around the time when she went missing, her mom and the boyfriend. So at that point, we started looking into, okay, what is going on here? What does the report say? Which we're not going to get too much into right now, but because it is an ongoing investigation. But you know, just what we saw, that she was supposed to be wearing a helmet, that she had half of her skull removed. People were wondering, like, what else? How many other children are there out there just like that? And then the unfortunate day when they found her body and it confirmed that she was no longer with us, people were enraged because you remember that this little girl, you see her photo right there, her smile is so beautiful, she's so sweet, and she just drew in people from around the globe who didn't even know her. People were just enraged. They wanted to know what was going on with her, including, we did a story here at KHOU, if you recall, one of our reporters spoke to her daycare classmates. I mean, just heartbreaking. Children were asking. So viewers wrote in on our Facebook page and through email, and they were asking, how many other children are there like that? So our investigative team, it took about 4 or 5 of us, we're wondering the same thing. We requested the documents for the child fatality reports for 2018, which was the year before Malia Davis passed, obviously, because those cases are closed and they can release that information to us. So we started looking into those to see how many in the state of Texas. And what we found was, on average, 78 children die from physical abuse in the state of Texas. Correct.
And the number 12 was from the Houston area alone, from 1 year that you were able to uncover. And I want to make that point very clear, because you went through, you know, thousands of pieces of paper and documents, and you couldn't even get through all of them, I'm assuming, because there's just so many cases. Well, so that's in the Houston area.
For the Houston area, we did get through every single sheet of paper. This is, I mean, there are hundreds of pages, and right here, this right here is just one case, okay, that we're going to get to here shortly. But it's just heartbreaking to read these documents. It took a team, and when you talk about the 12, those are the 12 cases that we know in the Houston area where CPS was involved in that child's family. The child died, CPS was somehow involved prior to the death of that child. They were investigating, and oftentimes the cases aren't closed until the child passes. And when we say investigating, we don't mean that child specifically, but maybe there was a sibling in the past. So CPS was aware that this family was living under a roof where there were abuse allegations, and that's where people are enraged. Here's another child, this child's dead. Wait a minute, CPS, you knew that there was potential abuse going on with another sibling prior to this? How could you? But then there's the side when you start talking to CPS, and I talked to a former judge, where they say the goal at the end of the day is to do everything they can to keep the children with their parents. So if that means, you know, classes, counseling, monitoring inside the home, that's the end game, is to keep, it's so hard to remove a child from their parents' home. And a lot of times the children want to be with their parents. That's what's even more heartbreaking.
Yes, it's that connection. It's very hard to understand, though, because in so many of these cases, as you said, there have been signs of violence. There have, the parents have made it very clear that maybe they are not fit to be parents, and I think the system focuses on sort of, getting them the help they need, hoping they can change their ways. But then when you see 12 dead children in 1 year, people think
that's just the Houston area.
And that's just the Houston area.
Where CPS knows of it.
Yeah.
We don't know how many more there are.
Who are not in the system.
Right,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah, but I thought it was very interesting that you talked to CPS as well, because people keep saying there is these children were failed by the system, but when you talk to the system itself, when you talk to CPS workers, they are overwhelmed.
They are.
There's so many cases.
They are.
What was something that you heard from them that you found interesting?
Well, as far as speaking to the caseworkers, I found it very interesting that they juggle 18 cases at a time. And right now, if you look at your screen, what we're scrolling through, these are the stories of the 12 children in the Houston area who died violently last year. And CPS knew their families, knew of them, knew that there was a prior history of alleged abuse. And this is on our website right now. We know that you can't read this quickly as it scrolls, but if you go to khou.com/investigates, you can see the entire article that our entire team put together, and really get a look into what we found and the process of CPS and how they look to investigate these cases. I will tell you this, Reka. In looking at all these cases, the one thing I found in common is a lot of the times it's the grandparents who are throwing up the warning flags to CPS, making those phone calls. You'll recall a couple of months ago I did a story on a little girl called Halo Williams, and we're going to show you some sound from her grandmother. I interviewed her. She has 2 siblings, and Halo died abused according to medical records and according to doctors. Even the doctors.
And this is the video of her?
This is photos of her head. The January before she died, her grandmother reported she was wearing a cast. She had bruises to her head, and the mother's claims were she fell off of a trampoline. She fell off of a slide at the park. And once grandmother reported the allegations, she was no longer allowed to see precious Halo. This is a video right there. Her grandmother said she loved to watch her cook and dance around, and they would wear similar dresses, and this was her heart. And you could see right here some of the signs of abuse. Even medical examiners, doctors from Texas Children's, I saw in the reports, wrote in that they reported that they were concerned about abuse, at least on 3 occasions. And Halo passed last summer, and it just breaks your heart when you hear the day that her grandmother had to go to the hospital because her daughter called and said, "Come now, it's Halo. I don't know what's going on. I need you to come to the hospital now." Grandmother arrives at the hospital. Halo's parents weren't even there, she tells me. It was just her. Take a listen to what she had to hear from nurses and doctors when she arrived.
And then the nurses told me that was it. And they just told me to hold her. They just told me just to hold her. So I was able just to hold her. And I just told her I'm sorry. Because I tried. I didn't know what else to do, but I tried. I didn't believe it. I just didn't believe it because she was 3. She's innocent. Why? You're supposed to do something before, not after.
And you hear her right there pleading, why? You're supposed to do something before, not after. And she tells me that she had been calling since the January before, 5 to 6 months before Halo died, to report those allegations. But that process just took too long, in her opinion, and she felt like Halo could have been saved. Her death could have been prevented had they done more. And when she says, why are you doing something now? Well, when there's a fatality, CPS closes the case. But in this case, Halo has siblings, 2 brothers. And so that's why they were involved. Now, are they safe? So now they're involved on that end of it. So she is still going to court trying to get custody of the 2 boys.
And that was my next question, because so many people will see this and say, if they have a family member who is willing to step in and talk to CPS and put their own children on the radar because they are allegedly abusing their grandchildren, how hard is it for those grandparents to get custody of those kids? I mean, it sounds like it's an uphill battle.
Well, they have to go through the adoption process first. They can be a safety placement household where the child can go there while CPS investigates.
Okay.
And the parents agree to that. But in this case, the mother would not, because she was, as the grandmother told me, upset that grandmother had reported abuse allegations.
Oh, wow.
So sometimes it backfires
Yeah.
in that way. But yeah, so the case we worked on most recently, Jasmine Roban, it's the little girl with the 96 fractures. You've seen it in the news. We've reported it.
The baby.
The
infant,
baby.
yeah.
There she is right there in NICU. She only had 11 weeks of life.
And she was a preemie.
She was a preemie, yes. So she was born last year in April, and her grandparents, she has, her parents had a child after her, after she passed. So her grandparents are in the process of going through the adoption steps they need to do to have custody of the baby. She also has a 2-year-old brother who is in foster care, and her grandparents tell me that they are very happy with the foster family, so that, you know, that they are fine with just having the newborn, and she is adorable. I met her, and of course we're not reporting their names, but you know, it's a happy time for them, but it's heartbreaking because right here, Jasmine Roban, 96 fractures, a cracked skull, and just the details we don't want to put on TV because they're just too gruesome.
Horrifying.
It is.
It is horrifying.
But when you think, you know, it's a preemie, a baby, and I mean, you wouldn't want you don't want an animal to even be treated this way.
No.
You know, and when you think of a child like this, I mean, if you see the hands, how big they are right there over the child, you can see, I mean, she was barely 3 pounds, barely, just under 3 pounds. And as I said again, in this case, it's the grandparents who are fighting for some kind of justice, and they sat down with me a couple of months ago, just heartbroken, and just like in the case of KHOU, the grandmother, Micah Roban, told me, out of the blue, she got a message on Facebook from Jasmine's mother saying, "Come quick, she's in the hospital." Listen to what she had to say about that.
I gave her a kiss, and that's all I could do.
I don't see how you could do anything like that to a baby, an infant, preemie infant.
There's so many kids that could have been saved if CPS and everybody else would have, you know, stepped in and cared, did their job, but they didn't.
So that's another case right here where it's the grandparents fighting for justice. I mean, imagine that, getting a message on Facebook, get to the hospital, and, you know, Jasmine had barely been home a couple of weeks. These grandparents never had the chance to hold their grandchild.
Wow.
And what's even more heartbreaking is they have a portion of her ashes and these pendants they wear. And it says, "God has you in his hands, I have you in my heart." Can you just imagine? I mean, it's just heartbreaking to know that, you know, and now to have Jasmine's little sister and see that baby, and just every day, you know, it's a reminder.
It's
you
a
know,
reminder.
It is.
And in some ways, I'm sure they feel like a certain level of redemption, that they maybe can care for this baby because they couldn't do it for Jasmine. So Jasmine has an older sibling. Did CPS have a case out with the older sibling as far as abuse allegations there?
Yes, so that's where that's where they were investigating those allegations, and CPS couldn't locate the father and the mother because they kept moving around. So they went door knocking, they couldn't find them, no one would tell them where they were. So we found in our records that Jasmine's father, Jason Roban Jr., had been arrested during that time. So he had been in jail and bonded out. So clearly someone could find him, correct?
Yeah.
So we sat down with a child fatalities analyst over at the State Department of Family Services, and they talked to us for about 40 minutes about the process, what they do, how they look at the numbers, and I asked them about specific cases, and Jasmine was one of them.
I think hindsight's 20/20, and I think anyone would always agree, if you had just asked one more person, if you had found one more thing, could you have made a difference? And I think in this situation, while efforts were made, that hindsight's always there, where you wish you could have done just one different thing. I think first, I don't know if sympathy is enough. For those families that have experienced a great loss, you can't undo that, right? I can't give you enough to make up for that. But what I can say is that every day there are dedicated folks at this agency who are trying to leave a legacy for that child.
So CPS has some improvements they talked to me about, including they have a renewed policy and relationship with law enforcement now, so they'll have real-time information, such as when Jason Roban Jr. got arrested and no one knew any better, because they were communicating, but there was such a delay.
Yeah.
You know, by the time you find him, it's too late sometimes.
So I have a question about Jasmine's case in particular. So there was a CPS case out against the parents because she has an older sibling or had an older brother, and there were issues, possible issues of abuse there. And after Jasmine was born and she was premature, I'm just wondering how a hospital was able to release this baby to a family where they have a record of abuse.
And that's what the grandparents told me was their main frustration, because they were still investigating. So there was an open file, but you know, unless there's any kind of charge, it's just hard to remove the child from the family. And furthermore, Jasmine's younger sibling, who was born just months ago, the grandparents told me they had to call CPS and say, hey guys, you might not know this, but there's a baby that was born today, you know, from the same mother. Are you all going to go over there and get the child or what? And at that point, CPS, they say, did respond.
Okay.
So, and the child has been placed with them temporarily. But, you know, you have to wonder, had they not made that phone call, you know, what may have happened. And you're looking here at the photos. These are the pendants that the Robans wear now in remembrance of Jasmine. That is her blanket. They were just overjoyed when they found out that they were having a little granddaughter. Jason Roban Sr. mentioned they went out and bought probably $1,000 worth of girl stuff because they were just so overjoyed.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I can't imagine what this family and those grandparents are going through. And thank you to our viewers who are watching this, who are sending us really great questions. A question, let's get to some of them now, because one that keeps coming up is talking about the Malia Davis case and how you said this was kind of a springboard for her case, was a springboard for your investigation. But Yvonne Porter wants to know why we haven't heard any more about the Malia case, and saying that they should still be on it. Is CPS still on that case?
Well, they're investigating, so it's been turned over to the Harris County authorities, because they are investigating the case now to see, you know, what kind of criminal charges may come. So that investigation is ongoing still. Now, as you can see, as in the cases we told you about in 2018, these things take time. So it's unclear, as far as we know, how long it will take to get to the bottom of this. But there's a lot of things investigators don't share with us at this point, because they don't want anything to jeopardize their investigation, clearly. But with Malia Davis, we know that her mother's boyfriend, Darian Vance, is behind bars. So we're just waiting for that process to continue. This just happened a few months ago.
And you looked at 2018 cases.
Right, and CPS was involved in her case in 2018, but Malia passed in 2019, so she will be part of those stats.
Okay.
But yeah, that is the case that has everyone talking and had us curious as to, okay, how many more? And I have a feeling that this is just a topic we will continue to look into for quite a while.
Yeah, no, you guys did extensive investigating into this. A comment that has come up from Annette Baez says, there are so many kids in CPS custody and not enough foster parents. Is fostering something that you talk to CPS about? Is that a problem they run into?
Well, from this, I looked at as well court-appointed advocates who are the volunteers who go to court with the child, follow the case through and through, because a lot of times there's turnover with caseworkers. So these court-appointed advocates, these are caseworkers, but the court-appointed advocates go to court to make sure that everything's consistent, that the child's going to their doctor's appointments, so on and so forth. And there is a shortage, they tell me, of foster care. There's a shortage of community involvement. There's a shortage of volunteers. So that is a need that needs to be filled. There is a shortage of caseworkers in Harris County alone, in the Houston area. There are a number of vacancies, and it is a revolving door. This is not a job. You see it right here. These caseworkers, I spent 2 days in the field with them. It's not a job for the weak at heart, and you have to be compassionate about what you do, because it's a process where they sit down and interview everyone involved, and each interview is about 20 to 30 minutes. You know, and it's a tough job. I will say that, a very tough job. One of the girls I have followed right here, Stephanie Shrimplin, she's a child fatality investigator, and she goes to the home after a child dies to make sure any siblings who are living there are in a safe environment. And our case was one that was recently in the news, where a toddler, Alan Vieta, was run over or hit by a car in a parking lot, and we showed surveillance. Mom was walking with her infant, and the child was walking behind, and so he was hit. Going to that home the next day and interviewing that child's father, I mean, can you just imagine how heartbroken, you know? And this caseworker had to go to an apartment complex to find him. He wasn't there. Went to another one, tried to locate him. No one was home. Had to call relatives just to try to track him down. Then when she does, the house is 30 minutes away. He requested a translator. One of them did not want to be there at the time, obviously, because we were there, and that was her choice. They had to call in another translator. And he did the interview in English, but she was there just in case. All of these things take time, you know, and she just had 18 hours to gather that information.
Wow.
So, yeah, they do have a hard job.
Yeah. And it's an overwhelming job. It is emotionally overwhelming. It is just the amount of time, the very little time. They have to do so much work and so much legwork and tracking these folks down. It sounds like a lot. You know, Rachel Marquez is saying that CPS needs reform. These children who really need to be removed are overlooked because many of these caseworkers are hell-bent on removing children from genuinely good and innocent parents. Is that something they talked about, the possibility of removing children from a home who are, you know, with parents that maybe aren't the best parents, but are working to get better? Is that?
Reka, it's quite the opposite.
Yeah.
You know, CPS is saying we try to keep the children with the families. We try to help the families, give them the resources they need so that they can raise their own children. Because at the end of the day, they want to make sure they're making the right decision and pulling a child away from their parents, because that has an impact on the child as well, especially if the child is, say, in middle school. They understand what's going on, you know? So that's the end goal, is to make sure that the child is safe, and if they can be safe with their parents, that's where they'd like to place them.
And parents have rights. I think a lot of people.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, that's a big thing. I mean, they have rights in place, and that's why you can't just take. That's why these grandparents can't just take these kids away from their parents. Because so many people will say, "What are you doing? If you know that your child is abusing your grandchild, get them out of there."
Right.
It's not that easy.
Well, exactly. And initially, if they're put into a safety placement with a relative, the parents have to agree on that placement, you know, such as the case with Halo Williams. And if the grandparent is the one reporting the alleged abuse, how likely are the parents going to be to cooperate with that arrangement?
Yes.
You know, so it's not until later, when the courts are involved, that it becomes a permanent arrangement. I did speak on the telephone with a former family court judge of 20 years, and she is now the chair of the CPS Council. Her name's Bonnie Helms, and I asked her about this and what her goals are with this new council, which the legislature appointed to make recommendations to them, which is a big step. And she told me, you know, Cheryl, she goes, I think the judges today need some more training in handling child trauma and in understanding the CPS process, because they're making these impactful decisions from the bench.
Yes.
So now that she's off the bench and she's seeing it from this side, this is what she's saying: they need more training.
Do we have sound from that?
We do not.
We do not. I'm
Yeah.
sorry. I thought we were going to hear
No,
from her,
that's
but I
okay.
want to talk about Stormy Dunn. She is a viewer who left a comment saying that honestly, we have fostered, and it's sad to hear these stories. We've learned in a year of fostering that there is not enough social workers for all the kids in foster care. They are backed up with cases. It is very sad, and we have to have more social workers in the field to keep this stuff from happening. Social work is a thankless job.
Right.
It is an exhausting job. It does not necessarily pay well. It's very hard to get people on board with that, and I'm sure that that is part of the issue with all of this in the system.
They're similar to the caseworkers, right? You know,
Yeah.
and recently caseworkers got a raise by the legislature, which is good to try to maintain caseworkers who are passionate and feel like they need to be compensated more. But yeah, as far as the case with counselors, this is where the volunteers come in. I interviewed a court-appointed child advocate. We did a story with her. It aired this past Saturday. It is on our investigations tab of our website. And she's been volunteering for 12 years. And there is a need for volunteers here in the Houston area. So if you have some time, this lady has a full-time job. She's amazing. She's in the real estate industry, and she just loves it. She says it's so rewarding. She doesn't forget a child. Oftentimes, she's invited to their high school graduations, their weddings, and it's such a rewarding experience. And these volunteers are trained, and they are the person who are the tagline with the resources the state does have. So a lot of times, the foster parents or families who need things don't know where to go, and this volunteer is the connector with all the resources available. So they have a very important unpaid job, Reka.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
You know, I think so many people who are watching this, they're commenting and they're saying, look, CPS needs to be investigated, overhauled, and this is not just in the Houston area or in Texas in general. This is an issue that you will see
Everywhere.
across our country. But when you were talking, you know, to CPS, did they have any ideas as to how they could have reform in the system? Is there any way to move forward in all of this and learn from this?
Okay, so what they're doing right now is, you saw that I interviewed Catherine Sibley. She is the lead fatalities investigator. She looks at all of the data. She sits down with a team of 5 people, and they look at what happened last year. Let's look at every detail of this case. Where could we have improved? Where can we improve next time? Not only that, the council, the CPS council that they have now, that the legislature has approved, the members are former judges and people who have been involved in some way in the justice system and have dealt with child abuse firsthand. So they meet, and I went to one of their meetings, and they've been going on the caseworker ride-alongs as well. We're working in the field, seeing what's going on, so that they can make recommendations to the legislature. So there's no one solution. There are just steps in getting in that direction. You know, there's no overhaul reform. There's no push the button and wipe out the entire staff and start over. It's let's work with what we have right now.
Yeah.
You know, the legislature has invested money into that agency. So let's see what the CPS council does. This is a new council. You know, let's see what they do, what kind of recommendations they make in the next session to help better protect children.
Even one child death is not, you know, I mean, it shouldn't happen, but it sounds like they are moving forward. In your 5 months of investigation, is there anything that surprised you? You've seen a lot, Cheryl. You've done a lot of investigations. You went through all of the papers. Anything that was surprising to you?
Well, what surprised me is the involvement that the grandparents have. That's the common denominator I put in, and also, you know, that the phone calls that were made and the fact that not only was CPS called, but police were called. And the breakdown in communication there is what floored me, such as in the Roban case. Kind of like, if I'm a reporter and I'm looking at a piece of paper and it's telling me this guy is in jail and I've knocked on doors, you know, why can't I see it if it's in front of me? That's one of the first places I would look if they had a criminal background was, okay, we can't find them in anyone's home. Let's check the jail books. You know, it's that kind of breakdown. But again, that's why they're analyzing the data to see where they can make improvements. But yeah, I would think the communication breakdown and putting these pieces together and just seeing, okay, there's a puzzle here. Why couldn't someone else put this? That's frustrating. But you know, it comes back to how much time are these caseworkers and investigators given to work on putting together a puzzle like that. You know, that blew me away. And then the involvement of the grandparents, like, you know, God bless them, Rika. You know, that's so tough. I mean, it's your own children that you're dealing with.
That you're reporting and
that
dealing with.
Is not, that takes a lot of courage.
But you know, to protect a child.
Absolutely.
I mean, really, God bless them. That is. It's incredible to have those people in there. You know, some people are also commenting saying that there are a lot of foster homes available and there are opportunities. It's just CPS is either reluctant or just unable to remove these kids. Is that something you've heard from social workers as well?
Well, you know, CPS is making the recommendations. They bring them to court, but at the end of the day, you know, that judge is making the call, Rika. So that's, well, you know, we will continue to look into this. You know, this is not the end of that. Again, if you want to look at our investigation, it is online under khou.com/investigates. Silent Cries is what it's called, and there are several stories there. We're going to end this today here, but if you comment online, I will be on there interacting throughout the afternoon. I'd be happy to answer your questions because I know there are plenty. Many people have written in and left comments, and I've been going on the KHOU Facebook page where people are commenting, and I believe we'll have a post there as well today where we can answer your questions because I know there are so many, and we just have so much time. But this is definitely something that our investigative team is very passionate about, and if there's something out there you're thinking about that we have not covered or an angle that you would like to see, let us know. You know, we can't think of everything, you know. Sometimes it takes the viewers to write in, such as in the case with Malia Davis. Hey, we have questions about what else is out there, and then this is the end product right here. You know, it takes months to look into, but this is our job, and we're committed to it.
And it gets the conversation started, and it gets people thinking about this because change obviously needs to happen, and you need everyone on board for this. Cheryl Mercedes, thank you so much. This is an incredible investigation. You do need to see this online, and of course, we were getting so many interesting comments on this, which I think
I will be online
you will be able to
answering.
answer.
I will go to my desk and start answering those questions. Thank you so much for taking an interest in this very important topic.
Absolutely. Thanks, guys. We'll see you in a little bit.